I will be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all of the difference. In our lifetime, we will travel many roads, some long and winding, some short and brief, and some that lead into the unknown. But there is one road we will all come to face one day, the road less traveled. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your humble host, Dennis Carroll, and this is your other humble host, Mr. Gerald Fountain. And
Hello,
this
everybody.
is, hello, sir. This
How you
is
doing?
episode 7 of The Road Less Traveled. How's that road been going with you, Gerald?
Little shaky here lately with all the storms rolling through.
Yeah, I've been hearing you some bad weather up that way, huh?
Yeah, I rolled through last night and right before midnight, and we lost power till this afternoon, and now it's back up. But now we got another round of storms coming through. It's supposed to be worse than last night, so we'll see how that goes.
Well, sound like you've had quite a time, all right. This is the worst time of the year for your power to go out, definitely.
Wasn't too bad. I mean, our basement stays pretty cool, and it was a cooler day in the morning for us. So the most of the time we were out without power was during the morning. So the house stayed pretty cool. It was just late afternoon it started getting kind of hot.
Well, I'll tell you what, I tell you what, where I'm situated at, we've had 96 and 97 degrees, like I think about 5 or 6 straight days. I mean, it's starting to get. I'm looking for a little break here. We had a cold snap a few days back, and it only got up to 90. So
Yeah,
a little cold snap there,
that's
yeah,
pretty.
yeah.
That's pretty bad when you say, "Well, it only got up to 89 or so." It's like really only got up to 89.
We take what we can get, right? Yeah, there
That's
you go.
right.
We're gonna say hello to the people out there in podcast land, and the ones gathering in our chat room here. Hello to the lovely Shiro, and hello Crystal, and Midwest Night Watchers. You wouldn't happen to be familiar with him, would you?
I think he might be related.
Yeah, you might know him pretty good. There's Wizard Moon, and let's see who else we got checking in so far. Sharon, hello, Sharon, and Catherine, and Kyle. Hello, that's my brother Kyle Smith out there, and let's see who else we got so far. I think that's all we got right now checking in, but they're assembling slowly but surely. So you know
Yep.
what we got on tab for tonight, Gerald? Ghost
I
towns.
I
What do you think
believe we're
about
going to
that?
be talking about ghost towns.
Oh, ghost towns, yes, sir. Spooky kind of stuff right there. And
Yeah, there's always that mystery of out west. Whether it's during the old west or when the miners and explorers. I mean, there's just all kinds of stories out there.
well, there's a lot of periods in American history that I find very fascinating, and of course, one of my favorites, without a doubt, is the West, the Wild West period, or whatever name you want to give it, the westward expansion, as some people call it. But that has spawned a lot of legends, stories, ghost stories, you name it. And I found out just recently I may be somewhat related to Doc Holliday on my mother's
Oh,
side. Yeah. So that makes me want to strap on my 6 gun and
there you
go
go.
go get in a gambling game somewhere or something. But anyway, uh, I find that a fascinating period of time. So much was going on. It was a lawless time, and yet a lot of people don't realize it, Gerald. When you go to examine the historical records, there was a lot of law. It was just regarded in certain areas because it was so far out. Here's the thing about the law in those days. You got to remember this. We're going to be talking about ghost towns. The law in the town, the city, was a whole lot different than the law in the county.
Right.
Yeah, it was a lot more in the county, mainly because they didn't have as much coverage. They didn't have that many deputies. That's why the Texas Rangers were established, And there were the Arizona Rangers too, the New Mexico Rangers, the Arizona Rangers, and Texas Rangers.
Right.
They had to have people that were volunteers. Most of them were volunteers to help to keep the law and order going on in those counties. But it was very lawless in the counties more so than the cities. There were certain things you weren't allowed to do in the city. You couldn't carry guns in saloons a lot of places. They wouldn't allow that. Tombstone was one where they would take your gun into city limits. That was it. Supposedly.
Right.
You were supposed to turn it in. You were supposed to.
That was after they cleaned up the town a little bit, though, try to bring law and order. Other than that, it was just like they say, the Wild West. I mean, you might have a sheriff or the constable in your town, but sometimes you got to wonder, okay, were they going along with what was happening in their town? So then you have people in the territories, because a lot of them weren't even states yet. So you had territories, and then you had federal marshals. So you had like a contradictory of what was law and what wasn't. And most times,
oops, I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button there. That's true. Very, very true. Very true. And I'm in the wrong section here. I'm going to the brand here. Hold on just a second. I was going to show some, if I can get them up, some ghost town pictures here.
All right.
Well, this is a very famous movie here, by the way. That's a pretty good movie since nobody's ever seen it. It's a pretty good sort of a ghost movie. Ghost Town. So you check that one out. Definitely. I like the way that's put together. That highway leading in to the ghost town.
That's pretty good graphic, isn't it?
Here is a real ghost town. Okay. That's what we're talking about tonight. And look at that wouldn't you like to have that old car sitting there? Definitely.
Oh yeah.
It just put it in the yard and make a planter out of it,
I think we can go get that running. We can probably get it running.
Yeah. True. But you have here's another. This is a little more western looking ghost town. I'd love to have that old wagon. That would be good.
Oh yeah. Who knows what they hauled in that?
Oh yeah, definitely. But you had a lot of like we said, you had a lot related to mining going on here. You had the silver mines and the gold mines, the copper mines, and even salt mines. You had salt mines where they were mining salt.
Right.
A lot of the mining industries, what built these towns, they threw these towns up real quick whenever they struck gold somewhere or something, because that was how to make money. You made money off the guys that pull the gold out of the ground.
Yeah.
That was just as good as going to find the gold yourself. That was one way to do it, And in one of my favorite Western movies, Tombstone with Kurt Russell, that's the first thing they talk about when they hit town. How much money we're gonna make here,
That's right.
That was what it was all about. And but when the mines died, when the gold ran out and the silver ran out, the mines, that was the end of the mines, and that was the end of the town.
Yeah.
Go on to wherever the next gold rush or gold strike was.
Unless you had a railroad or something, or were already established town when they found gold, then you weren't going to survive very long after the gold rush was over. And that's the other thing, when they were popping up these towns, to be on a settlement claim, everybody started gathering there to try to claim their fortune. Not only do you have to protect yourself from robbers within the gold mine community, but then when you went to, say, the treasurer office or assayer's office, you
Oh,
had to travel through town where
Yep.
there's already cowboys and robbers gathered at the saloons and places like that. So you had to survive two different environments.
They had claim jumpers too. People would steal your claim if you wasn't careful. That's the bad thing about it. You know, I've read stories about that where they would have to go to town and get the supplies in, buy the beans or whatever, you know, and they would get back and somebody had already stole the claim. Somebody had already moved in on a claim. That had to make you mad, definitely. No wonder there was some gunfights and stuff. You can't blame them in a way, you know. Somebody's squatting in your mind when you get back home. That's it.
So a lot of people died. So you can imagine all that energy in those areas out west, whether it was gunfighters, whether it was outlaws, whether it was prospectors being murdered for their claims and gold. I mean, so you have those areas that are just with a tremendous amount of energy that was put in those areas.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah, and like I say, and the law was a lot different. You didn't get away with stuff like that in town, like you did out in the county, like you did out in the countryside. It was more lenient that way. And there's that's where a lot of stagecoaches were robbed. People were robbed on the highways. You had to, you know, the highwaymen, like you did in England back in the medieval times, the highwaymen that would rob coaches on the road. You had the same thing going on in the Old West, you know. It was all about the money. That was a smart, quick way to make money. Unfortunately, if you were a woman, the best way for you to make money was to be a soiled dove or the biggest thing that women did. You know, you see that in movies a lot. You think most of them were saloon girls, but that's not true. Most women made their money washing clothes.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and in the gold towns, you know, also there was kitchens popping up all over. So the women were cooking, you know, some of them were men, but most of them were women were cooking, you know, for the miners. And I mean, just all that little stuff popped up for prosperity for other people's. Cause if you weren't a miner and you weren't a farmer, you know, how are you making your money?
Oh yeah. You had to work in an industry of some sort, you know. Absolutely. If you didn't mind, you had to farm or cattle ranch.
Cattle ranch,
You
yes.
had to run cattle or horses. That was it, you know. But it was all service related, you know. It was all, you know, you had to have horses to pull the mine, gold, and all this stuff. You had to have one thing on top of another. And then you had farriers, the guy who took care of horses, shot them and shoe them. And then you had cattle people that took care of the cattle. That's where your steak on the table came from, you know. And the farmer, he was raising the potatoes and went with your steak. So everybody had a hand in doing what they had to do. That's the way it was set up. But times were kind of hard too. Times were kind of lean in many ways because if you had a lot of kids, especially a large family, it was rougher on you, you know. And I remember reading about that's exactly why Wyatt Earp went to Alaska. You know why he went to Alaska? That's where the gold rush was. You know, he was still trying to make money like he did in Tombstone. That's what he had. Follow the money, you know.
Yeah, because most of, you know, when they were working the mines and say Saturday night they'd head into town, you know, and whether they had money or not, you know, they always tried to buy drinks, and there was dance hall girls and there was poker games and gambling. So I mean, it was easy for somebody to lose their money, and plus you had to feed yourself, get a meal.
Oh yeah, and you know, I see still a lot of equivalents today with how the Wild West was run itself. I mean, like there are a lot of laws in many states, and every state's got different laws. You know, that's just the way this country is made up. And so it was with the Wild West. You had different laws in different areas. But to this day, most people are not allowed to go in a saloon with a gun. That's the way it was back in the old, supposed to be in the days of the Old West. But there were some places like Tombstone or maybe some of these other, Dodge City, some of these other places like that had different laws. You could take a gun in one saloon in one city, but you wasn't allowed to do that in another city. But by the end, they eventually all had to do that because it was
Right.
got so wild. People were killing people and all that, getting drunk and shooting up people in card games. Look what happened to Wild Bill Hickok. Okay, I mean,
Yeah, the dead man's hand.
yeah, the dead man's hand at the end, which was aces and eights, by the way, black aces and eights. But it's interesting, you know, that you have a correlation to that to the way things are run today as well in some areas. Sheriff's got to keep the fine good money. Yep, that's right. I was reading a comment there.
Oh, our sirens are going off.
Yeah. Some towns back then wouldn't let any guns in town. That's right, Roger Blair. That's what we talked about earlier. I think Tombstone eventually had to pass an ordinance where you couldn't carry your gun in town. You had to turn it in to the sheriff's office, and then you pick it up on your way out.
Well, you know, just like in the movie Tombstone or whatever Western you watch, whether it's a John Wayne or whatever, you know, when the town is first developed, whether it's a gold mine town or whatever it was, there was lawlessness. You know, it's pretty much whoever was the big dude on the frontier ran the town, you know, and usually the sheriff and deputies went along with whatever the general rule was. But then as these towns prospered, they wanted to be respectable, you know, and maybe become a territory, becoming a state, they had to clean up their acts. So that's usually when you lead into Wild Bill and, you know, Hickok coming in and clean up these towns because the outstanding citizens at the time wanted to clean it up and be respectable instead of just a rundown wild town.
But you know, a lot of those sheriffs, deputies, and all that were on the take too. You know, they were bought by the big businesses like the big saloons and some of these places. They sort of were employed by them, you might say.
Right.
That's the way it was a lot of corruption going on, you know, a whole lot of corruption. But like I say, some people think it's better today, but it's probably just the same, you know, as it was then. It's just more obvious then than it's
Yeah.
a lot more obvious then than it is now, but they gotta keep it under tabs. But a lot of that's still going on. I mean, you have a lot of corruption and stuff like that.
Well,
You know, like back in the day, Chicago was owned by certain gangs for a long time, you know,
yeah.
and and they owned the police departments too. Yeah.
Well, just so you know, Dennis, if I have to dip out, the sirens are going off right now outside. So I am in the basement, but I might have to take care of something or we might lose power. Who knows?
All right, sir. Well, you take care of yourself. All right, I'll finish up here.
Well, I'm going to stay here now, but I'm just saying if for whatever reason I disappear, that's why. Not because anything happened. Just,
Oh, okay.
I might have to take care of something.
Oh, okay. If you need to, let me know. Okay. Yeah, definitely head for the basement. But is it getting better bad outside? You hear some thunder lightning going on?
The sirens are going off. Jane just went upstairs to check to see what's going on because we do have animals.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So should we start with the OK Corral, even though that's you know, Tombstone is not really a ghost town, but there is a lot of hauntings in Tombstone.
Yeah, well, here's I've heard a ton of ghost stories associated with those things. That a lot of times they say you can hear noises in the old mines as if there was still people nicking away. And somebody said, "Ah, that's just probably a pipe blowing in the wind," but there's no wind in the mines. Okay, there's nobody else with that. I've always wanted to investigate some of those supposedly haunted mines and haunted mining towns. There's supposed to be some very hot areas, especially in Nevada, I think, that are very, very much supposed to be haunted.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, like we talked about earlier, you know, people jumping claims, people robbing them for gold. There's going to be shootings and deaths and murders. So there's a lot of hauntings around the mine sites.
That's true. Susan,
Dogmen and mines.
I'll tell Susan right quick. She said that there's a dogman in the mine. I don't think there's any dogman, but I wouldn't put it past being Tommy knockers.
Oh yeah, right.
There's
Yep.
Sharon Lane says there's a cursed ghost town, but I can't remember the name of it. A lot of them had curses on them. Supposedly they were cursed by the Native American Indians that were around there. That a lot of, because they stole their land, of course. A lot of that land was supposed to be cursed by the Native Americans. Isn't that true, Joe?
Right. I mean, the Native Americans had their land that was sacred to them. And I mean, whether it was burial or whether it was celebratory land, where they had their communities. But you also had just think of the Lost Dutchman mine. Look at the curse that was supposedly on the Lost Dutchman mine.
And the curse on the Lost Dutchman's mine, Gerald. The curse is supposed to be put on it by Native Americans was you will find it, but you can never take it back. You can never take it out. And that would have to be a curse, wouldn't it? If you think about it, that is a pretty bad curse. You can find it, but you can never own it.
Yep, exactly.
Otis says vampires and gold mines. That would be a good place for them to hide out, definitely. If I were a vampire, I might think about putting my coffin in a mine there somewhere.
If you ever watched the old movie Gargoyles, that's where they hung out.
Oh yeah, gargoyles. Yeah, they hung out in the caves, huh? The old mines. It says I've lived and do live on Native American land in North Carolina. Okay.
Wow.
A lot of that supposedly I've heard from that. I've heard certain Native Americans say that a lot of the land was cursed because it was taken from them, and that wouldn't surprise me. And a lot of that land, it was especially if it was sacred land to them, absolutely would have had probably curses put on him.
Yeah, because I mean, their generations upon generations of Native Americans was living out there, and they were travelers, they were migrators, so they had a territory that they went from season to season, so when we started developing towns, not necessarily we, but I mean, when they started going out west and looking for land and gold and all that stuff, they were taking up territory that they usually migrated through or made their summer homes or their fall homes.
Yep. By the way, I think it's Sharon. That was Bodie. Yeah, Bodie. That's the name of the thing. I couldn't think of it. I'm glad you're doing it.
Bodie has some hauntings in it.
And let's see. Get this up. Just comments trying to slip away from me here. Hold on a second. There we go. Let get that up. Just asking a question. Not Dennis, how would you define a gargoyle? I think gargoyles. That's a subject for another time. And gargoyles are definitely demonic in some ways. But if you're not talking about the statue that's a gutter spout, okay?
Right.
The real gargoyles may be downright demonic or fallen angels, absolutely.
Go out and watch the movie.
Most of the time, they're sitting on church running water off out of the gutters.
Yeah. Go out and watch the movie The Gargoyles and get back with us and we'll do a show or something on it.
Oh, yeah. That is a good movie, the Gargoyle movie. I always like to watch it when it comes on. Svengoolie or something.
Yep, Svengoolie, yep.
Yeah. Do you think, let's see, I got a question here. Do you think pale collars would be in caves, but what would be the eyesight of evolved to and devolved or things like that? Well, if something lives in a cave, it would probably, if it came outside, would have bad eyesight in a bright light, so it would have to come out at night mainly. And you have the Cherokee legend of the moon-eyed people, who their eyes were supposed to like glow, but they could only come out at night because they couldn't see good in daylight. So that sounds like creatures or things that live underground, and they do find a lot. I know you've seen that, Gerald. They find fish in caves, living in underground streams that have no eyes. They don't need them. They don't need them.
Yep. I mean, if you got a cave system, whether it's an old mine or whatever, we don't know what's inhabiting that. I mean, they could repurpose those mines for whatever. We don't know if cryptids or Bigfoot are hiding out down there. Maybe that's where some of the miners disappeared. Maybe they stumbled onto a place they weren't supposed to.
That's true. It's an old black and white movie about gargoyles in the West. Yeah. Huge moths were slamming against the wall. I'll tell you something about moths. I've had reports, a lot of reports. I'm talking a foot long size moths being seen by people. Suppose that is a big moth. That's bigger than a bird. Okay.
Right.
That is a big moth. That is freaky to think about. But supposedly these big giant moths come out of caves. And that's what I've heard. I've never seen one.
Well, growing up 2 times in my life, I've seen a Luna moth, and they're big. Luna moths are big.
They can go pretty good size. I've seen some about at least 6 or 7 inches long, and that almost that much wide. They can be very big, but people have showed actually, it could be doctored photos, of course. Actually, showing pictures of foot long moths. I mean, these things are foot, maybe 12, 13, 14 inches long.
Wow.
About 10 inches wide. That's a big moth. I know that's a bug. That's a bug and a half there.
Now, if you start seeing moths the size of what Dr. Doolittle had, or maybe Mothra and Godzilla, then I'd start worrying.
Yeah. Mothra. Remember Mothra? Yeah. Penny Van says, any of you seen things like that happen right after a storm? Let's see. I've seen a huge raven. Yeah. Extremely big. Yeah. Ravens can get big, Sharon. They can get real big. I'll tell you something freaky about ravens. I don't know if you know this, Gerald, but did you know that ravens and wolves hang out together?
No, I did not.
Yeah. They have sort of a coexistence thing going on. They help each other out.
Are the ravens like spotters for the wolves or what?
Crystal says she saw a huge moth the other week. They can get big. Yeah, they can get pretty big. But when it starts coming in at a foot long or more, that's what I call unusual. I think that's getting a little too big. Could you imagine, though, science tells us that once upon a time, listen to this, this freak you out. Once upon a time, there were mosquitoes on this planet. Blood-sucking mosquitoes as big as eagles.
Oh, my gosh.
That is freaky. That's a monster in my book.
So you're talking like prehistoric, or what area are you talking about?
Mm-hmm. They can suck all the blood out of you. One of them get on you, that's the end of you. It'd be like a vampire attack, wouldn't it? Yeah, we found Gerald. There wasn't a drop left in him.
They wouldn't want my blood.
Yeah, they wouldn't. I'd kill them. They'd probably try to get my blood. It'd kill them right off the bat. Too much medicine in my blood. It would probably kill right over. Right, okay. They had nothing to do with UFOs though. Bats. That's one. Not. Let's see. I'm reading on these lines here. This had nothing to do with UFOs though. Bats that are not the type we have here in Moss bumming the house. Well, there's been a report of, I think we mentioned this, I mentioned just to you the other day, Gerald, that reports of bugs not being found on the windscreens anymore, not being found on the cars and all that.
Right.
It's like there's like a shortage of insects. If that's true, we are in big trouble because that's a big part of the food chain, insects, although we don't eat them. Other things eat them. Bats,
and we need these insects to pollinate, whether it's bees or whatever, and there's been a shortage of bees disappearing.
Catherine Pierce said the cockroaches were 3 feet long. Yeah, they were big too. Everything was big once upon a time on this planet. Snakes, lizards, everything big, like it is in Texas. Bees yeah, bees are very important. Yeah, we wouldn't be here without if it wasn't for bees, really. I mean, we'd be in big trouble. And that's what you need to do one day, Joe. You need to get into beekeeping, buddy.
There is plenty of people around our area that has beehives and stuff. We used to get I remember as a kid, we used to get honey from our local pastor that had beehives only a couple blocks away from us.
Oh, yeah. Honey is good for you. And, you know, honey is one of the few things that never rots. It never gets old. They have pulled 2,000-year-old honey pots out of Egyptian tombs. You could still eat it.
Yep. All
That's
you gotta
amazing.
do, all you gotta do is heat it up, and
Yep.
it comes right back to life.
Mm-hmm. But there are less bugs, I feel like. You know, of course, up north you call them fireflies. Down here in the south we call them lightning bugs. But the whole thing is there's not as many of them. Have you noticed that? There's not as many as there used to be. There used to be, you used to see plenty of them at night, but there's not that many anymore.
Right. Yeah, just in this property where we're at now, when we first moved here, which was 20 years ago, we had tons of lightning bugs coming out of the fields. Now this year we haven't hardly had any. I mean, handful here and there.
Oh yeah. And you know, frogs, that's something else you don't see that much of. Frogs and toads. You used to see a lot of toads. It could be that there is a decrease in the insects. Possibility.
And
Wouldn't surprise me.
walking sticks and praying mantises. We haven't had a lot this year.
Oh yeah. Penny says many women were making money by other means and moved out of mining towns in consequence there was so much business. Well, yeah, well, they weren't only just prostitutes or soul does, as we ought to call them. They were also like we said, washerwomen. They would take in ironing. They were working the restaurants. A lot of women were cattle women, you know, just like the men. They ran cattle,
Yeah.
horses. The women did a lot. You know, you don't see that a lot, but out there, it didn't depend on your sex. You had to do things. You had to do things. You know what I'm saying? That to me, that went with the women as just as much as it did with the men.
Yep.
I
mean, a lot of times though, you had women say you had a hardware store and your husband died, whether from sickness or a gunfight or whatever, then a woman took over the store and ran it. And there, you know, once the towns got established and started getting some law and order, then, you know, the women came in for teaching jobs to teach the kids. And I mean, you just had all this stuff going on. And not all dance hall girls were prostitutes either. Some of them were actually just entertainers.
Well, yeah, a lot of them, the saloon girls, were not prostitutes. They were just their main job. Listen to this. This is a freaky. Okay, their main job, like Miss Kitty and Gunsmoke, their main job was to get you to drink liquor. So they sit there with you and buy them a drink and you drink. So they were just making money for the saloon.
Right. Till you passed out, then they moved on to somebody else.
That's what it was all about. And I remember reading one account where one saloon girl said that I didn't drink. She would not drink with the men because you would be so falling down drunk by the end of the day, you wouldn't know what was going on. What she would do is sit there and sip her drink, you know, and let them to buy more drinks, see. And they would drink them. She would let them get drunk, but not her. She was smart, too. But she would get their money done. She would get the money for the saloon that way. That's just the way that worked. But now some of these, like the very famous Birdcage Saloon in Tombstone, they had the little cubby holes up in the top, the little cells. They call them cradles, and that was where they would go to do their business up there. That was the prostitutes. They had nothing going on there, so you'd go get a little room up there, you know. That was when you hit town, you do that. But then most of the time you'd go looking for something to eat or something to drink or even somewhere to live. You had to have, you know, a boarding room or boarding house. And a lot of them, if you see in the movie Tombstones, it's very authentic. You see a ton of tents around there. Most of those tents were what you slept in.
Right.
You know, and of course you had opium dens too, by the way. Yeah,
Oh
those
yeah.
yeah. But see, it was the laws were very lenient in many ways, different than what we have today when it comes to stuff like that. Public drunkenness was not that much of more. If you got real belligerent and shot something up or jumped on somebody and started a fight, then you might end up in jail. But you could lay out on the street drunk all day and the people just step over you and keep going, you know. That was no big deal to them, you know, that's just the way it was. And unless and the saloon girls or the prostitutes, unless they cut you up or stole your money, no, they never ended up in jail because it was how they made money, and you were making money not for your own self, but you were made the saloon was sort of the pimp.
Yep.
You know, you paid the
Exactly.
house. You got to pay the house. Yeah, that's the way it goes.
Susan wants to know how accurate Tombstone movie was. I think it's a good portrayal. I mean, sure, they kind of took some special I don't know, they might have played it up because it was a Hollywood movie in some areas,
Yeah,
but most of it was pretty factual.
they try to be as accurate as possible, especially the way they talked and did things. I read about that a lot, but of course, with Hollywood, you always gonna have some inaccuracies. You know,
Right. I
that's
mean,
the
they
way
gotta
they
sell
go.
tickets to the movie. Then
Let's
Catherine's
see.
talking about the Birdcage Theater is very haunted.
Very, very haunted. Yeah, supposedly because there were so many shootouts, so many people died. And one other thing, you didn't, you don't hear much about this. You do see one scene in Tombstone like that. Well, there was a lot of knifing going on too, not just shooting. People would get knifed in a hurry real quick too. Everybody had a knife on them.
Yep. And just like
Uh,
Resurrection Mary that we have throughout the United States, depending on what area you live in, they also had that out in the Old West because a lot of saloon girls would get murdered, or they on a occasion might become pregnant, and then the cowboy or whoever would have to kill them because they didn't want that, or they just got involved at the wrong place, wrong time, and they got killed too.
And Sharon Lane says my ancestors raised horses and mules and did pretty well after Civil War. Well, you had to have that, definitely. I always felt sorry for horses and mules, though. Those poor animals were true beasts of burden. They had a hard, hard life. You're talking about the people had hard lives. Their animals had just as probably harder lives than these people did. And there wasn't any organization to make sure that horses got treated right. There weren't
Right.
any organizations to make sure. I've heard a lot of stories about some of the mean farmers that lived. They would beat their mules and all that stuff. You had some mean people. Val Kilmer
Yeah.
is Doc. Yeah.
The old miners, they would pack hundreds of pounds on them old mules. If the old mule gave out, they just went and got another one.
Mm-hmm. You're right about that, Susan. Val Kilmer as Doc. He was born to play Doc. That role fit Val Kilmer very well. And it's very
Yeah,
sad though. Val Kilmer got throat cancer and lost his voice.
right.
I think they had to try to reconstruct his voice box and try to get it back where he could talk. He's a fantastic actor.
Yeah.
I tell you another movie. If you've never seen he did fantastic in was The Ghost in the Darkness. Don't matter. A great movie. You need to watch that if you've never seen it. It's about two man-eating lions in, I think, Kenya or the Congo, somewhere like that. And these lions were almost like demonical. I mean, they were like super intelligent. You ever seen that, Gerald?
Oh yeah, I've seen
That's a
that
great
movie, and
movie.
actually, those two lions are in the museum here in Chicago.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was something else, but they were smart, very intelligent, and evil. They were downright evil. If you can think of an animal being like that, they were. There has been a lot of talk about they were supposed to be demonically possessed animals. I don't know if that's true or not. But what the legend was that a supposed witch doctor had put demons in these lions as sort of like a living curse kind of thing. Of course,
I know if they were just normal lions, I know once they got the taste of human blood, like they said, they were tracking people just to get that taste again.
Sharon Lane said Doc was very educated and came from a wealthy Southern family. Well, they wasn't real wealthy, but they had a little money because they were able to send him to dental school. That was a lot of money back in the day. He was a dentist.
I still like his character in the movie, whether they, like I said, they made up some of the facts or not, but he's a very interesting historical figure. And I love the line in the movie, "I'm your Huckleberry."
Oh yeah, I'm your Huckleberry. Yeah, actually, there's a lot of contention to that, but I went back and looked at the exact day that Doc Holliday and all that would have been alive. He could have read Tom Sawyer. Tom Sawyer was out, and who's in Tom Sawyer, girl? Huckleberry Finn.
Yep.
Well, Doc Holliday was a dentist, but he didn't do too well as a dentist. That's why he took up gambling. There was more money in him. Yeah, Virginia City. That's Ponderosa.
Well, there was a lot of people though that gave up their professions to travel out west to try to make it rich. And Doc Holliday, on the other hand, was there not necessarily to mine, but to take people's money that were making it.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't think they were all card cheats or anything. You didn't last long if you cheated because you get caught eventually. Bad things would happen. So they were all pretty much, I would say professional in that respect. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Exactly. I mean, Doc had probably been on the card circuit and hitting town from town, so he was probably a really good poker player.
Yeah. I don't think Wyatt Earp did a whole lot of poker, so he might not have been too good at it. But I think he was more like what's that other game? Keno, stuff like that. Craps, roulette, and all that other stuff. Good night, Journal Ann turned 5. Birthday cake time. Okay, I read the term Huckleberry was a mispronunciation. There's different. Yeah, it's supposed to allude to candle handles, casket handles. I don't believe that, though. I think that's kind of made up because we all know who Huckleberry is, okay? Huckleberry was very famous even then. It was a very well-known thing. And Doc Holliday definitely was a reader because he knew Latin and all this other stuff, okay? He was an educated man. And you don't become a dentist, being uneducated. Uh-oh, we've lost Gerald. Probably got knocked off the air by the storms. He's got some bad storms up that way. Anyway, what I was going to say is that you didn't become educated without reading, and I'm sure that, but I don't believe that one about the coffin handles, Huckleberry and all. I don't, pallbearers and all that stuff. That sounds a little bit contrived to me. I believe he's talking about Huckleberry. I'm your Huckleberry. I'm your friend. I'm the one, Huckleberry, like Huckleberry Finn. I think that's what that basically was. The one expression in Tombstone I never quite understood where that came from is, I'll send you to hell on a shutter. That is a strange expression there. That's an interesting one. Absolutely. Back then, university included classical education, Latin, Greek. Oh yeah, you didn't get out without that. Absolutely not. But that was a sign of a learned person. If you knew Latin, Greek, stuff like that, you had to read, you had to study. Absolutely. Without a doubt, Doc Holliday was a very learned man. But he just found it more easier to make money probably than poker tables than he did in dentistry. Because dentistry was, of course, unfortunately not a very founded science at that time. You had to be kind of leery how you did things and pull people's teeth. There probably wasn't a whole lot of money in it. I think they carried bodies on a shutter. Yeah, it might be something like that. Carried a hell on a shutter. But that's a strange expression. Well, why would you take a shutter down and carry a body off? If you didn't have a stretcher, I guess the shutter would do. And then I know, let's have a spelling contest. Yeah. My favorite expression in the whole movie is, well, Johnny, you look like somebody just walked over your grave. That's a very old Southern expression. You look like somebody walked over your grave. In other words, you look like mourned over death. You look like you're very shocked, spooked by something. I think Dot went to one of the Southern military academies before dental school. He did speak Latin, yeah. The name Huckleberry is a North American variation of the English dialectal name, variously called huckleberry and whortleberry. Yeah, it's a bush too, bush with berries on it. The bilberry actually is what it was, I think. That was a good imitation. Thank you. It was on as far back as King Arthur. Yeah, interesting. The Spartan said you either come home with your shield or on it. They would bring your body back on a shield. That was sort of like a stretcher. But that was the Spartans. You didn't come home unless you were victorious. Yes, he did, Sharon. He nailed that accent very good. It doesn't sound too fake, you know. Also, some of them have very fake accents. People always needed their teeth fixed pre-toothpaste. Oh, yeah. They did have toothbrushes. Here's the weird thing about it. They didn't have toothpaste, but they had toothbrushes. Toothbrushes have been around since Cleopatra had one. I mean, you know, they've been around a long time to brush your teeth with, but nobody invented toothpaste. But they probably had some other kind of herbs or something that they used in place of that, you know. Yeah, dentistry would be an odd profession back then, absolutely. I'll tell you a little story about, since we're talking about ghost towns tonight. When I was a kid, there was a tourist thing up in Maggie Valley, North Carolina. It was called Ghost Town in the Sky. And what it was a park. And you could go, and was made like an old West town. Of course, they had rides, they had Ferris wheels, they had roller coasters. They had a haunted mine, by the way, which was my favorite thing. They had some great stuff at Ghost Town in the Sky. And you got there by either a chairlift. I mean, it was way up in this mountain, okay? You had a chairlift, you had a cable car. I took that cable car going down one time. You talking about spooky. That thing was cracking and popping all the way down. I was glad when that thing was over. I didn't know if it was going to come loose and crash on the other side of a mountain or what. But you could also be driven up there in a car, in a van. And you talking about some of the mountain roads, you could almost see your tail on the going up. You know what I'm saying? It was freaky. But Ghost Town in the Sky was a real neat, fun place. They had gunfights. They had a saloon. You could go in the saloon. They had saloon girls. It was just like stepping back in time into the old West. It was great. Well, finally, Ghost Town got shut down. It's still there. And if you sneak up there, and I'm not telling you to do that, if you sneak up there and visit it, you can see. And now here's the ironic thing: Ghost Town is now really a ghost town. That's the strange part. Huh? Lost power. Okay. Uh, Midwest. Don't worry about it, sir. Just make sure you and you're safe up that way, bud. And we'll catch you on the flip side. Yeah, it's aggravating when my power goes out around here all the time. Whether it's thunder and storms or what. I made my own toothpaste, the baking soda and cone. Yeah. Oh yeah, I have done that actually. Makes a great toothpaste, by the way, and very tasty toothpaste. The coconut oil. I think it had on some bad weather up that way tonight. I want to tell you all again about now this Wednesday night, 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Hunting the Shadows is going to be the special 2-hour seminar now. Don't forget it. Self-Defense Against the Darkness, Part 2. You do not want to miss this. We're going to do something on this podcast that has never been done before, okay? On any podcasts. So don't miss it. Check it out. Make sure your friends tune in too. Everybody's going to need this podcast, okay? Trust me. We do. That's a great way to best. Yeah, I'll tell you what. By the way, the baking soda really brightens your teeth. Defense against the dark arts. Well, you could say that too, yeah. Dark arts play a lot in that too, absolutely. But I am not the director of the Defense of Dark Arts director. I'm sorry. That's Mr. Snape there. Okay. Professor Snape does that stuff. We just got power back on our street in Houston all 4 weeks. Yeah, I know you had a very bad time in Houston. Yes, sir. It was bad. Burl come through town pretty quick, huh? I hate sounding like a doomsayer, but I've talked about this before. Thank you, because we'll put that up. Things are going to start turning against us, okay? That includes nature and a lot of other stuff. Absolutely. I take notes when you reach. Oh, thank you, Sharon. That's a good idea. I didn't think about that, but yeah, notes definitely might want to do that. But this is something I think we all need in our lives, and we need to address it. Absolutely. And I've got my new mouse going tonight, thanks to my brother Overbuilt there. I think it's the one that sent that in. It's working good. Thank you so much for that, bud. Lots of shark attacks this year. Yeah. A lot of things are going. I would think twice before getting in the ocean myself. I mean, they're getting closer to the shore and everything else. I've seen sharks. I know. They can be very fast. You might think you can get out of the water, but don't don't think that. That's the wrong idea. You can't get away from them that fast. These sharks, they're in their environment. You're not. That's not your environment. Yeah, I don't think Overbuilt there. I appreciate what that meant. I got it the other day, and it works like a charm. I'm just kind of getting used to it here. Total, my son's car tree fell on it. Oh, that's bad. What's the bad thing about it? You know, your insurance will pay for some of that and some of it, but sometimes, but it's just a hassle, a real big hassle when you have to go through things like that. Absolutely. But anyway, yeah, the ghost towns are very interesting. I've always wanted, that's been on my bucket list, to actually go to a real authentic ghost town. Spend a couple of nights there, just kicking around to see what would really happen. Because there are a lot of great ghost stories and stuff told about the ghost towns and the hangings that took place there and all that stuff. My grandson caught a baby bull shark off Florida Gulf Coast. Oh yeah, that would not be hard to do probably. There's plenty of sharks hanging around those waters there. By myself? Yeah, well, if I couldn't get anybody to go with me, I'd probably go by myself. I've done that. I'm gonna tell you something, Coco. All these many years that I have investigated, most of it was that I was alone. I've been in some places that would give you nightmares, trust me. And been in situations that would do that. But most of the time I was alone. Just for the last maybe 10 or 15 years that I've been involved in this, I have actually joined a couple of groups. I formed one of my own, had my own group one time. It was called actually CPI. Carolina Paranormal Investigations. I also had another one that was called Carolina CSPRI. That stood for Carolina Society for Paranormal Investigation and Research. Okay. I actually have, I don't know if a lot of you know this or not, but I actually have in a group, an organization that's called the American Institute for Paranormal Research and Investigation, AIPRI. It is a real group. We have a website, we have a Facebook. If you ever want to join it, feel free to do so. It doesn't cost anything. But the American Institute for Paranormal Research and Investigation backs up a lot of its work and the things that it does. But I also have my own group called it's actually called Harvest Moon Paranormal Investigations. That's my group now. I have nobody in it right now, but I can start it up anytime I want if I want to get back out in the field to do that. Overcash, Dennis? No, I don't know. I don't know anything about overcash. Could you tell me what that means? The storm was a Category 5 at Jamaica and mysteriously lessened to a Category 1 and hit Houston, or it would have been a lot worse. That's what I heard, yeah. Well, maybe somebody was praying for that, not to be so bad. You have a niece that can go, oh, yeah, I know that. But anyway, I have done a lot of research alone. I'm a lone wolf. I don't run in a pack. But I have mentored many groups over the years, a lot of people that I've taken out. I've taught people. I used to hold classes, folks. I used to hold classes out in graveyards. Okay. I used to have classes out there in cemeteries. Yeah. We'll say that's all that matters. That's good. Lorraine Hotel and Tombstone. Larian Hotel. Oh, yeah. Been there, but don't want to spend the night. Okay, I hear you. Yeah, see, I wouldn't want to do the night either. Yep, I hear you. Overcast out of North Carolina? No, I don't think I do. I've been a lot of places in North Carolina and Tennessee. That's like I was on Jessica's show the other day. I talked about I've been to Werewolf Springs in Tennessee. Actually, it's not called Werewolf Springs. It's called Hall Springs, but that's the legend of it. If you missed Jessica's show on that, check it out. It was a great show. We talked about the werewolf of Werewolf Springs and all that. We got into some really deep rabbit holes on that. Oh, he's an investigator supposed to be famous. Overcash. Okay, the name sounds familiar. I don't know him. No, I'm afraid not. What did you teach in the cemetery? Oh, different things. How to investigate open areas, how to hold your camera, your video camera, how to take pictures, how to do sound, EVPs, and all that. I taught the whole thing. I had one time I had a group of about 30 people out in the cemetery, and it was kind of freaky. But I had a lot of teaching classes that I've taught out there. They were all free. I didn't pay for any of it. You and Jessica support each other. You two are my favorites. She's a great lady. I like her a lot. She and I think a lot alike. She reminds me of me. Okay. She and I think a lot alike. She's very, very smart and strong. I like a good, strong, smart woman. Okay. They're my favorite kind of people. Donald Spencer should know who he is. Okay. Overcast. That name is familiar. I just don't think it sounds very familiar. Yeah. But anyway, that's our show on ghost towns tonight. And like I said, that's on my bucket list. If I find a ghost town, I might invite someone you'd go with me. Absolutely. I have thought about doing in the future, maybe doing a live investigation sometime. But it would be so hard to set up. To do the right thing. I'd have to have absolute control over what's going on with it. So it would be more of a demonstration, live demonstration type of a thing. I might look into doing that sometime in the future. Absolutely. And I've got a lot of work I'm doing on the Midnight Road excursions into the unknown. You are gonna love this. Wait till you hear some of the stories I've got. But I may have a surprise for everybody tomorrow. So keep your ears tuned, okay? May have a surprise tomorrow. Everyone has a good evening. Thank you, Annie Venom, for being here. That would be great, Kyle. I'd love to visit a ghost town as well. Absolutely. I'd love to check one out, spend it out there, and just see what develops, you know. They are fascinating places. The interesting thing about ghost towns are not only that they may be haunted, but they also are haunted by the memories of what took place there. You know, history comes alive in places like that, without a doubt. And I love history. Absolutely. And that's another facet of the paranormal. You can't ever ignore the history. The history is the lifeblood of it. Oh, you like surprises, do you, Crystal? Well, you may be getting one tomorrow. I'm thinking about it. So we'll see what develops. I'm being very mysterious for a reason. Okay. Well, I want to appreciate you all. I do appreciate you all being here tonight and tuning in. I hope you enjoyed our little thing on ghost towns. And I hope you're all safe up that way and gets his power back on. This is definitely one time of the year you don't want your power to go off. Yeah. History was my favorite in school, Crystal says. Must have got that from my uncle. Okay. Maybe you did. You never know. Complete with villainous chuckle. Yep. There you go. That's my villainous chuckle. Okay, Catherine. Thank you for being here. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. It's been interesting. It's always good when friends get together and talk and interact with each other. It's always a good thing. Okay. And we hope to see you back Wednesday night, 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. 2-hour seminar. Self-defense against the darkness. It might be the dark arts too. Part 2. Okay. And it's going to be broken into 2 parts, actually. Part 1 of this is going to be the nature of evil. Part 2 is dealing with evil. Okay. And that's what we're going to be talking about. But like I say, this is going to be a podcast like you have never, ever seen before. But we're going to do something in this podcast that probably hasn't been done before, I don't think. Okay. You do not want to miss this podcast. Trust me. That sounds amazing, John Fulton says. Thank you. I hope it will be fun. I hope it'll be interesting, informative for everyone on that. So I appreciate you all being here tonight and stay safe out there in podcast land till we get together again Wednesday night. And remember, nos adventus quartus, we adventure forth, and non timbo mala, fear no evil. So until we get together again, my friends, via con Dios.